Darkness. A faint hum. Then, a single voice. For centuries, Earth was nothing. Just a quiet speck in the dark. Forgotten. Unnoticed. Faint images flash, cities at night, oceans, a moonrise, then static cuts in. Until they came. Not to trade. Not to talk. But to see if the stories were true. Quick cuts. An alien ship tearing through the clouds, soldiers scrambling. A blinding beam cutting an asteroid in two. We thought we were defending ourselves. We didn't realize. We were showing them what we could do. Beat of silence. A deep, alien screech echoes faintly. Now, the whole galaxy knows our name, and some want to crown us. Others want to erase us. Heartbeat sound. The camera zooms toward a massive alien assembly station surrounded by fleets. Earth was a backwater planet. But today, we stand trial before the stars. Hard cut to black. Text appears. The day humanity stood before the galaxy. The knock on our door. Earth had always been at the edge of everything. Not the edge of the galaxy, that would have been glamorous, but the edge of importance. We weren't a core world, a trade hub, or a strategic outpost. We weren't even worth annexing by the big powers. For most of our recorded history, we thought we were alone. Then, 70 years ago, a flicker of something passed through our Kuiper belt. It wasn't a ship, not exactly. More like a signal wrapped in an object. And that was when we learned the truth. The galaxy knew about us. The thing is, the galaxy didn't care. The message was short. One line. Status. Non-strategic. Observation only. That was it. No diplomatic envoy. No grand introduction to the interstellar community. Just a label stamped on humanity like we were a boring wildlife reserve. The decades after that were strange. We knew we were being watched. Deep orbit satellites in odd trajectories, occasional flashes in the atmosphere. But there was no contact. It became almost a joke. The aliens are real, but they're ignoring us. Then, 6 months ago, they stopped ignoring us. I was in the control room at Armstrong Station, Earth's largest orbital facility, when it happened. We just rotated into the dark side, the curve of Earth glowing faintly beneath us. The comms boards lit up with a signal so strong it blew half our receivers. Unknown origin. My comms officer stammered. No encryption we recognize. It's coming from inside lunar orbit. That made no sense. Nothing bigger than a probe should have been there. But as we pulled the trajectory, my stomach tightened. The source wasn't a probe. It was massive. The visuals came next. At first it looked like a jagged asteroid, black and dead. Then lights flickered across its hull in geometric patterns. Each flash timed with the signal bursts. Our first confirmed alien ship in human space. It was slowing down. I've read enough first contact thrillers to know what was supposed to happen. Frantic diplomacy, politicians shoving their way to microphones, scientists and linguists scrambling. What happened instead was that everyone froze. Not from awe, from the fact that this wasn't a casual visit. The ship was bleeding heat signatures from deep inside, enough to show even on our crude scopes. It was damaged. Badly. Armstrong Station doesn't have weapons, not real ones, but we still prepped the point defense batteries. If something that size fell toward Earth, well, there wouldn't be much left of Earth. Then, with an awkward, almost sick-looking roll, the alien ship broadcast again. Not a call for peace. Not a declaration of war. One word. Help. The debate lasted minutes, maybe less. You don't ignore the first alien message you ever get. We dispatched tugs, engineers, medics, the best we could scrape together. I was in the lead shuttle when we reached it. The closer we got, the more the damage made sense. Deep scoring along the hull, melted sections of armor, holes punched clean through decks. Whatever had hit them hadn't been subtle. Our maglocks sealed against their outer airlock. That was when I realized the real weight of the moment. I was about to be one of the first humans in history to step aboard an alien vessel. The air inside was thin, cold, and laced with a smell I can only describe as electrical rot. The walls weren't flat like ours. More like interlocking layers of bone and metal, the lines curving in ways that made my eyes ache. They met us in a corridor just wide enough for 2 people. Humanoid in shape, though taller, their skin a pale slate color with faint traceries of light under the surface. Their eyes, too many reflections, like looking into a pool at night. Their leader stepped forward, armor half melted. When they spoke, the words cut through my translator headset with perfect clarity. You are humans. It wasn't a question. They didn't waste time with formalities. They needed repairs, structural reinforcement, reactor patchwork, medical aid. In exchange, they gave us nothing but urgency. Every time we asked what had happened to them, the answer was the same. They will come. Over the next 24 hours, we learned 3 things. First, their ship was a courier. Not a warship, not a freighter, a messenger. Which meant whatever had done this had struck something fast and evasive. Second, their damage wasn't random. Every system that could transmit or store data had been surgically hit. Whatever had attacked them hadn't wanted them dead. It had wanted their message destroyed. Third, they had been heading toward Earth deliberately. By the second day, the crew was either dead or in medical stasis. Their leader, Captain Rawl, according to their insignia, called me into what passed for their bridge. You were not meant to be ignored, they said without preamble. I asked what they meant. The designation you were given, non-strategic, was deliberate. It was protection. The fewer who knew what you could do, the better. I laughed nervously. We don't even have FTL. What exactly can we do that scares the galaxy? Rawl's expression didn't change. You build things no one else builds. Not because you can. Because you want to. You solve problems you have no business solving, with materials you should not have. And you do it faster than anyone expects. Before I could argue, alarms went off. The courier's long-range sensors, now partially functional thanks to our work, lit up with half a dozen incoming contacts. Rawl didn't need to tell me who they were. They found us, they said. The contacts were fast. Too fast for us to run, too fast for help to arrive. Armstrong Station scrambled what few defense craft it had, but we both knew it would be useless. I asked if we should evacuate. Rawl's response was quiet, almost regretful. If you leave now, they will follow you home. And then the galaxy will really see what you can do. I still didn't understand what they meant, but I understood enough to know that something had changed. Earth wasn't a backwater anymore. Something had knocked on our door, and whatever was coming next, the galaxy was going to notice our answer. That was the moment we armed the station's experimental railguns. They were never meant for actual combat, just proof-of-concept work for a theoretical deep space defense network that the UN had laughed out of committee 3 years ago. We powered them anyway. The first of the attackers broke from the darkness an hour later. Sleek, predatory shapes, nothing like the courier. Their hulls shimmered with a shifting distortion that bent starlight, like they didn't want to be seen at all. The blueprint they feared. The battle over Armstrong Station didn't last long in real time, but the ripples of it didn't fade. Not in our skies. Not across the stars. I barely had time to pull the station's engineering teams out of the wreckage before the transmissions started. At first, just from Earth's capitals. Breathless calls for data, denials, panic demands to keep everything classified. But then, messages started coming from places I didn't recognize. They weren't human. The first was a burst of symbols, perfectly symmetrical, cycling in prime number sequences. Our linguists said it was polite interest. The second was a full data packet, coordinates of what seemed to be an embassy station somewhere near Tau Ceti, accompanied by a single translated phrase, "We would like to meet the ones who built the weapon." Thing is, we hadn't built the weapon. Not like they thought. The railguns that tore through those attackers were never meant for war. They were prototypes from the Pioneer Array project, an abandoned plan to build a defensive ring around Earth and Mars. The funding dried up after politicians decided the threat of alien contact was speculative at best. The guns we fired were incomplete, missing half their automated targeting systems, running on jury-rigged power couplings, and loaded with hand-machine slugs. And they'd still punched through a warship's shields in one shot. After the battle, Captain Rawl refused to leave orbit immediately. They claimed it was for sensor recalibration. But I knew better. They were waiting. For what? I asked. For them, Rawl said. The ones who will not ask politely. They were right. 3 days later, another ship arrived. Smaller than the courier, but sharper in profile, its hull a deep matte black that swallowed starlight. It carried no visible weapons, which, Rawl assured me, meant it was entirely armed. I'd been expecting hostility. What I got was worse. Curiosity. They docked without permission. The airlock cycled, and four figures stepped through. They weren't like Rawl's people. They moved with a precision that screamed of training, their armor smooth and faceless. Their leader's voice was a filtered hum. You have something that should not exist. It wasn't a question. They knew about the railguns. They even knew about the abandoned orbital defense network plans. They wanted the schematics. Not to trade for them, not to buy them, to take them. You understand, I said carefully, that those designs aren't even functional at scale. We had to patch together. That is why you are dangerous, the leader interrupted. You built an incomplete weapon and made it work in combat. That is not normal. It turned out, in the wider galaxy, militaries didn't innovate under pressure. They perfected things over centuries, making slow, cautious adjustments. Improvisation was for pirates and fringe scavengers. Not governments. Not soldiers. Humans? We were built on improvisation. We invented in war, in famine, in disaster. We turned spare parts and desperation into nuclear weapons in less than a decade. We'd sent people to the moon using less computing power than a child's toy. And in their eyes, that made us terrifying. Rawl had been listening silently, but now they stepped forward. Leave, they told the black-armored leader. You cannot protect them, the leader replied. I am not protecting them, Rawl said. I am protecting you. For a long, frozen moment, no one moved. Then the intruders left without another word. But I knew it wasn't over. That night, Rawl explained the deeper problem. In the galaxy's eyes, weapons are not dangerous because of what they are. They are dangerous because of who is willing to use them without hesitation. You just demonstrated both. I wanted to argue. The railguns had been fired in defense. But the truth was obvious. We hadn't hesitated. Not for a second. While diplomats scrambled to figure out who was friend and who was predator, the engineers back home got to work. It wasn't an order, no official directive went out. It was instinct. We started improving the railguns, testing higher velocity projectiles, modifying power capacitors, finding ways to make the system smaller, faster, cheaper. We didn't even know what enemy we were preparing for. It didn't matter. We were preparing anyway. The first real diplomatic contact came 2 weeks later, when an actual embassy ship arrived in orbit. Nothing damaged, nothing cloaked, just a gleaming construct of silver plates that moved like liquid. The envoy introduced themselves as Orali Veth, representing something called the Accords of Nine. We are here to discuss integration, they said in perfectly clear English, as though they'd been practicing for years. Earth's non-strategic designation is under review. The process is delicate. I could hear the unspoken part. You've made the galaxy nervous. Veth's delegation was polite, but I noticed they avoided discussing certain topics. Anytime I asked about the attackers over Armstrong Station, they redirected. Anytime I asked about Rawl's damaged courier, they claimed ignorance. Instead, they wanted to talk about human history, our wars, our inventions, the strange, brutal efficiency of our problem-solving. We have records, Veth admitted, but they do not explain your pattern. What pattern? I asked. That you create tools before you have the need for them, and then, when the need comes, you already have them ready. I laughed. That's not strategy. That's paranoia. Yes, Veth said without smiling. Paranoia is what keeps you alive out here. After the meeting, Rawl pulled me aside. The Accords will decide quickly, they warned. If they welcome you in, you will be under their rules. If they reject you, you will be under no one's. Either way, you will not be left alone. They were right again. 2 nights later, we intercepted a transmission not meant for us. A military band, encrypted in a style no one on Earth recognized except Rawl. It's a bounty, they said grimly, for your engineers. I felt a cold pit form in my stomach. All of them. Anyone with the knowledge to replicate what you built. Alive if possible. Dead if necessary. That was when the real work began. We locked down Armstrong Station. We moved critical personnel to deep shelters in Antarctica and the lunar bases. We turned every half-finished defense prototype into something that could fire at least once. And we started building something new, a weapon that didn't exist on paper, didn't exist in any database. A weapon only we could imagine. We called it Project Lancer. Lancer wasn't elegant. It wasn't meant to be. It was a weaponized asteroid, a solid mass of nickel iron fitted with propulsion arrays and a crude FTL sling. It could be accelerated to a fraction of light speed before it even left the solar system. In galactic terms, it was a war crime waiting to happen. No shielding could survive that kind of impact. And the galaxy's major powers had outlawed such weapons millennia ago. We didn't care. The first Lancer prototype was built in secret at the Mars shipyards, hidden inside a hollowed-out freighter. Even Rahl didn't see it until the final stage. When they did, they stared at the readouts for a long time before speaking. You understand that if anyone learns of this, they will unite against you. Even your so-called allies. I nodded. Then we'll make sure they never see it coming. The sky fell once. We didn't intend for the Lancer to be used so soon. In theory, it was a deterrent, a shadow weapon whispered about but never confirmed, a thing to keep enemies hesitant. But deterrence only works if your enemies care about losing. It started with an incident near the Oort cloud. A freighter registered to the Accords of 9 drifted into our system, claiming a navigation malfunction. Its transponder was clean. Its crew answered every hail. Its orbit was stable. Too stable. Our long-range sensors picked up microdistortions in the freighter's hull, enough to hide a compartment big enough to carry a dropship. Rahl saw it first. They're not here to trade. We shadowed them for a day. They made no aggressive moves. The diplomatic channels insisted they were here under a mutual observation agreement. But then, without warning, the freighter shifted trajectory, straight toward the Mars shipyards. When we moved to intercept, the freighter split open. The cargo hold unfolded into a launch bay, and 3 attack craft poured out. Their hulls were matte black and segmented, with no visible engines, moving in silent, perfect formation. They weren't here for the shipyards. They were here for the Lancer. The Mars defense grid opened fire immediately, but the black ships flickered in and out of our targeting locks, skipping across space in controlled microjumps. Even our fastest interceptors couldn't close the gap. The Lancer was still in dry dock, only 82% complete. It had no final navigation package, no guidance AI, just a crude acceleration array, a raw propulsion block, and its 200 million-ton nickel-iron core. And yet, it could still move. They won't expect you to launch it now, Rahl said. Because it won't hit anything. I shot back. Rahl's eyes, or whatever passed for eyes under their visor, didn't blink. They don't need to know that. We didn't aim for their ships. We aimed for their home. Well, not home exactly. The attackers' faction operated from a staging outpost called Varela Station, just outside our system. It was their fallback point, their logistics hub, their one safe harbor close to Sol. If we could make them believe we were willing to hit it with the Lancer, the message would be loud enough for the galaxy to hear. It took 3 frantic minutes to break the dry dock seals. Mars station engineers worked without orders. No chain of command, no hesitation. Cutting cables, jettisoning scaffolds, overloading magnetic clamps. The Lancer drifted free, its crude propulsion arrays glowing like a sunrise. We fired it. No one spoke for the first 30 seconds. The asteroid disappeared into the dark, burning on its acceleration path. Even with no course corrections, it would reach Varela Station in 17 hours. That's when the attackers broke. The black ships turned instantly, abandoning their attack and retreating toward the Oort cloud. The freighter's core exploded, erasing every trace of its transponder. 17 hours later, Varela Station broadcast a single message to all known systems. Cease hostilities. Sol system is off-limits until further notice. We didn't actually hit the station. We remotely detonated the propulsion arrays long before it arrived. leaving the asteroid tumbling harmlessly into deep space. But the galaxy didn't need to know that. The reaction was immediate and chaotic. The Accords of 9 summoned emergency councils. Trade ships canceled planned routes. Mercenary fleets tripled their prices for sole risk zones. And more importantly, every intelligence network in the galaxy began working to answer one question. Was Earth actually willing to drop a Lancer on a civilian installation? The truth was complicated. Some of us absolutely were. Some weren't. But in the void between those two camps, the galaxy saw only uncertainty. And uncertainty is more dangerous than certainty. 2 weeks after the incident, the first retaliatory move came, not as an attack but as a warning. A courier ship drifted into Earth orbit, unpowered, its hull coated in scorch marks. Inside, there was only one occupant, a human, or at least, someone who had been human before their lungs collapsed and their bones shattered from decompression. Pinned to their chest was a data crystal. No encryption, no message header, just a single image file, the schematics for the Lancer. They'd stolen it. The mood in the war room turned instantly cold. "We scrubbed those files," I said. "You scrubbed your copies," Rawl replied. "The originals are still in your minds. In your hands." The implication was clear. The attackers weren't done. They'd gotten the plans, but now they needed the builders. That night, I walked the Mars shipyards in silence. The workers had gone home hours ago, but the dry docks still smelled of welding plasma and scorched metal. This was where humanity had stepped into the galaxy spotlight, and now that spotlight was a targeting laser. I was still turning that thought over when I saw the silhouette. Not human, not Rawl. They were tall and thin, their limbs bending in ways that made my stomach knot. No weapons in sight, just watching me. When I took a step forward, they spoke in a voice like static. "You cannot win. I've been expecting threats, maybe even a bribe. Not this. What do you mean? You do not understand the scale. You believe you are making weapons, but you are making invitations. The more you build, the more will come. And if we stop?" I asked. "You will still die, only slower." When I reached for my comm, the figure was gone. By morning, we had another problem. A long-range scout probe near Proxima Centauri sent back an image of something massive moving toward Sol. At first, the readings made no sense. The object was bigger than any ship, moving without a visible drive signature. Rawl took one look and cursed. "Siege platform. Not theirs. Not the Accords. This is older. Much older." The platform was a relic from one of the galaxy's forgotten wars. A slow-moving fortress the size of a small moon, designed to enforce blockades. No crew, no negotiation protocols. Just a single function. Enter orbit, and keep firing until nothing below is alive. It would arrive in 40 days. That's when the argument started. Some wanted to negotiate with the Accords, to trade the Lancer tech for protection. Others wanted to double down, build more Lancers, hide them across the system, and prepare for the siege. I wanted neither. I wanted to use the siege platform. The idea was insane. Rawl said so immediately. "You can't control it. You can't even board it without being vaporized." "Not if we go in the back door," I said. "Every automated warship has one weakness: maintenance ports." The platform was old enough to need physical access hatches for repairs, hatches we could reach if we rode the right trajectory in microstealth craft. Once inside, we could reprogram it, turn it against the ones who sent it. Of course, the risk was obvious. If we failed, the platform would simply add our ships to its target list. But in the vote, the decision was unanimous. We'd done the impossible before. The next month was a blur. We built a boarding craft so small it could fit inside a cargo container. We layered it with the best stealth plating Earth could produce. We trained a team of 12, 6 humans, 6 volunteers from Rawl's people, to infiltrate and override the platform's core AI. We launched on day 38,